All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to this explainer. Grab a shovel, because today we're going on a bit of a digital archaeological dig. We're stepping away from those highly polished, multi-million-dollar productions you see today, and instead we're unearthing a forgotten, gritty subculture from the early 2000s internet. We're talking about a phenomenon that literally only exists now as a ghost in the digital machine. Why does this matter to us? Well, because examining these raw, grassroots artifacts reveal the pure, unfiltered passion of early internet creators in a way that modern content, it just rarely captures.
So, their own archive puts it pretty plainly. This is a former underground wrestling company that went out of business. It started at 2001. You gotta love the raw spelling and directness there, right? It tells you everything you need to know. We are exploring Xtreme Rampage Wrestling, or XRW. This was a completely raw, do-it-yourself promotion founded right at the dawn of the new millennium. It's long since closed its doors, but fascinatingly enough, it survives entirely through this cryptic, perfectly preserved YouTube archive that gives us an incredible window into the era.
And you know, one of the very first things you'll stumble across in their archive is exactly this. Green Max welcomes the fans to XRW. We are totally bypassing all the corporate polish today to drop right into the action. We're going to explore the artifacts, the characters, and just the sheer, unfiltered chaos of this independent wrestling scene to see exactly what made it tick. Let's move right into Section 1, the XRW roster, Order versus Mayhem. Because hey, every great wrestling promotion needs a memorable cast of characters.
So just looking at the archive's match records and video titles, we can actually organize this bizarre, colorful locker room into two pretty distinct camps. On the left, we've got what you might call the disciplined, militaristic, or patriotic fighters, guys like Russell Blade and Drill Sarge Dax. Then on the right side, the sheer agents of chaos. We're talking Davey the Evil Clown Zack, Green Max, Sarge Brimstone, and Hell's Guardian. It's the classic struggle of order versus mayhem, all playing out right there in the underground.
Let's break down some of these key players. At the absolute heart of the promotion was Russell Blade. Billed as the American Spirit, Blade essentially served as the primary protagonist for XRW. He wasn't just a fighter either, he was an ambassador, frequently recorded officially welcoming the fans into the XRW world before stepping into absolutely brutal no disqualification matches to defend his brand of order.
Now, in stark contrast to the American Spirit, we had Davey the Evil Clown Zack. I mean, what a name, right? He was an absurd but totally central figure to the promotion. He also introduced events, but mostly he was the guy who constantly found himself getting battered in brutal cage fights and incredibly lopsided handicap matches. He was just a wildly unpredictable staple of the whole XRO ecosystem.
Which brings us to Section 2, Beyond the Traditional Ring. Taking it outside, because, as you'll see, these characters weren't just cutting promos in front of a camera.
No, they were locked in these intense, sprawling feuds. One of the most recurring and, frankly, iconic rivalries in the XRW archive featured an alliance between Russell Blade and Green Max, going to absolute war against the deeply antagonistic duo of SG Brimstone and Hell's Guardian. The archive shows these four clashing over and over again, basically serving as the foundational feud of the entire company.
And let's look at how this builds, because these feuds escalated into deeply personal and vivid territory. The absolute perfect illustration of this DIY madness is an event simply titled, Green Max Tears Up Davey the Evil Clown Zack's Jeep. I mean, just think about what that actually means for a grassroots promotion. This isn't some prop car in a multi-million-dollar arena. This is very likely someone's actual daily driver being destroyed just to sell a storyline. It perfectly captures that aggressive, anything-goes vibe they had going on.
So, to settle all these bitter, personal disputes, XRW utilized a rapid-fire succession of extreme underground match formats. We're talking about parking lot brawls, literal cage fights, something they call gym wars, no disqualification matches where literally anything goes, and handicap matches that totally stack the deck against competitors like our friend, the Evil Clown.
And what exactly is a Gym Wars match, you ask? Well, fights like American Spirit Russell Blade versus Drill Sergeant Dax at a Gym Wars match brilliantly illustrate the very essence of this promotion. They utilized whatever space they could get their hands on. Taking over a local gym to host a war between two of their top stars, that is the ultimate expression of do-it-yourself independent wrestling.
And when the tension completely boiled over and the gym just wasn't enough to contain the violence, they simply took it outside. Just look at this archive record, a high-intensity parking lot brawl, featuring that core rivalry we talked about earlier, Blade and Max versus Brimstone and Hell's Guardian. No ring, no ropes, just pure concrete and aggression.
This leads us perfectly into Section 3, the evolution of combat, adapting to the times. Because XRW, they didn't just stay in one lane.
Interestingly enough, their willingness to experiment meant they didn't even stick to standard pro wrestling rules. They boldly ventured into mixed martial arts. The archive clearly lists an official XRW MMA fight between Hell's Guardian and the ever-present Davey the Evil Clown Zack. They were out there blurring the lines of combat sports long before it was mainstream, naturally adapting to the growing popularity of MMA in the early 2000s.
But as the years passed and technology completely shifted the landscape, we really have to ask ourselves, how did a raw, highly physical, underground scene from 2001 adapt to the bizarre modern era of the internet? Like, how does a concrete parking lot brawl actually translate to the digital age? Well, the answer is pretty surreal. In a massive twist, the archive includes a relatively recent event titled Russell Blade vs. Sergeant Brimstone AI Pro Wrestling Match. Really think about that for a second. The exact same people who were tearing up physical jeeps and brawling outside local gyms eventually proved their willingness to embrace total digital experimentation, simulating their iconic rivalries using artificial intelligence. That is just a wildly fascinating technological leap for a grassroots company, isn't it?
But, as we know, all things must come to an end. Section 4. The Final Bell. XRO Legacy.
Ultimately, as their own description stated, XRW went out of business. They left behind only a Blogspot web address and a quiet YouTube channel with a total of 29 videos. Today, that channel sits at exactly 7 subscribers. Just 7. But what you should really take away from this is that this tiny number, it isn't a failure. Rather, this channel acts as a perfectly preserved digital monument to early 2000s independent passion. It's a literal time capsule of pure creativity and grit.
Which leaves us with this final, genuinely fascinating thought. We found XRW, this totally chaotic world of clowns, parking lot brawls, and gym wars, surviving through 29 obscure videos. So what other vibrant, raw subcultures are frozen in time out there, sitting quietly on abandoned hard drives and forgotten channels, just waiting for someone to hit play? I highly encourage you to think about the digital artifacts we leave behind. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep your curiosity sharp, and I'll see you next time.